My grandfather kicked me out of the house because of my girly hobby. I read it, I 35M, am sitting by the fireplace in my now definitely my family estate, sipping whiskey and trying to sort out my feelings. This is a long story, full of pain, betrayal, and ultimately a kind of life's revenge. I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing by denying my family access to this house, which has been our family nest for generations. On one hand, they are family, flesh and blood. On the other, where was this family when I, an 18-year-old kid, was thrown out onto the street without a penny? I'll tell everything in order, because without the details you won't understand the depth. Sorry for the length, but it has all built up over the years. First, about our family. We are descendants of Irish immigrants who came to the USA at the beginning of the 20th century and founded a small textile manufacturing company in Massachusetts. Nothing fancy, like descendants of presidents or billionaires, just hardworking people who started with a small factory that sewed work clothes for miners and farmers. My great-grandfather turned it into a regional business, passed down to the eldest son in each generation. The company grew, and now it's a solid firm with several plants, producing textiles for clothing and furniture. Our family estate is a large old 20-room house in a Boston suburb, built by my great-grandfather in the 1920s. It was always passed to the eldest heir along with the company. It's not a palace, but a place with history. High ceilings, a fireplace in every room, a large garden with apple trees where we played as kids. It was always full of people. Our family is large and close-knit, at least it seemed that way. In our immediate family, me, the eldest son, my mom, now 62F, my younger brother, 34M, a year younger than me, and my grandfather deceased, more on him later. My father died when I was 15. He was the only one who truly understood me and my talent for drawing. My father was a creative soul himself. He loved painting landscapes in his free time, even though he ran the company. He encouraged me, bought me paints, sketchbooks, took me to exhibitions. Son, business is money, but art is the soul, he used to say. My grandfather, on the contrary, always grumbled that drawing was a girly pastime and that I should prepare to run the company. A man in our family must be as hard as steel, not mess around with a paintbrush, were his words. Besides us, many relatives lived in the estate. Uncle John, grandfather's elder brother, 78M, retired, former factory worker, always told stories about the good old days. His wife, Aunt Anna, 75F, baked the best pies and organized family holidays. Uncle Mike, father's younger brother, 60M, worked in the company as a sales manager, cheerful but a bit lazy. Aunt Mary, grandfather's sister, 70F, widow, lived with us after her husband's death, helped with the housework and looked after the garden. And the cousins, there were 6 of them. Cousin Tim, Uncle John's son, 37M, worked as a mechanic. Cousin Sarah, 35F, Aunt Mary's daughter, teacher. Cousin Alex, 32M, Uncle Mike's son, student. Cousin Lisa, 30F, also Mike's daughter, designer. Cousin Jake, 28M, John's son, programmer. And Cousin Emma, 26F, Anna's daughter from a previous marriage, nurse. We all grew up together in this huge house. It was like a big commune, dinner every evening at the common table, games in the garden, summer barbecues. I was never lonely, always someone around to play football with or share secrets. We were like one big, friendly gang, celebrating birthdays, Christmas with mountains of gifts under the tree. I loved this place, it was my world. But everything changed when my father died. I was 15, my brother 14. My father died in a car accident. He was driving home from work. The road was slippery after rain. A truck hit him. It was a shock for everyone. I remember that day like it was yesterday. Mom called in tears, told me to come home immediately. When I entered, the whole house was in mourning. Aunt Anna was sobbing in the kitchen. Uncle John sat silently with a bottle of whiskey. Grandfather paced back and forth, muttering something about a cursed life. Mom was hugging my brother, who was crying on her shoulder. And I just froze. My father was my hero, the only one who saw in me not just a business heir, but a person with dreams. We painted together in his study. He praised my paintings, said I was talented. Without him, the world went dark. The mourning period was terrible. The first weeks were a complete fog. The funeral, a sea of flowers, relatives from all over the state, the priest talking about the loss of the family's pillar. We all wore black. The house felt empty despite the crowd. Mom withdrew into herself, spoke little, but always kept my brother close. I noticed it even then. She always loved him more. My brother was the golden child, sweet, obedient, didn't argue with grandfather. And I was the rebel with paints and dreams of art school. Mom would say, "Your brother is so calm, like an angel," and to me, "Why can't you be like him?" During the mourning period, she hugged him, fed him, and I sat alone in my room, drawing portraits of my father so as not to lose my mind. The relatives tried to support us. Aunt Mary cooked favorite dishes. Uncle Mike took us for walks. Cousin Sarah read stories to the younger ones. But for me, it was hell. I didn't sleep at night, cried into my pillow, remembered how my father taught me to ride a bike or told stories about my great-grandfather. The family gathered every evening, shared memories, but I felt an emptiness. Grandfather took over the company, became harsher, forced me to learn the business. You're the eldest now, you must prepare. But without my father, everything seemed pointless. The mourning lasted for months. We visited the grave every week. Mom went to a therapist. My brother withdrew into games. I drew, it was my salvation. The family seemed to have rallied, but the cracks were already there. Mom favored my brother, grandfather pressured me. But life has its own plans. I turned 18. It was 2008, the crisis, the economy in the toilet, but in our family everything seemed stable. At that age, my father had joined grandfather's company, starting as an assistant. I expected something similar, maybe a gift, a party, a talk about the future. But on my birthday, grandfather gathered the whole family in the dining room. He announced, "I have rewritten the will. You are disinherited. The reason, my unmanly hobby, drawing." He said that everything that belonged to the firstborn son, my father, and after his death, to me as the firstborn, now goes to my brother. He is what a man in our family should be, practical, ready for business. And you with those paints like a little girl. Grandfather was always boring, old-fashioned, and categorical about everything new. He grew up in times when men didn't cry or draw, but worked with their hands. He completely cut me off from the family, said he wouldn't finance my education or well-being, and the worst part, he kicked me out of the house. "Pack your things and go, you're an adult." I was in despair. I begged him, "Grandpa, please, don't leave me without a roof over my head. I'm only 18, I don't know what to do." I was on my knees, tears flowing, but he said, "That's your problem," and no one stood up for me. Mom was silent. She always loved my brother more, the golden child who didn't argue. My brother, who was 17, sat quietly, probably happy about the inheritance. Uncle John muttered something about family traditions. Aunt Anna looked away. The cousins whispered among themselves, but no one said a word in my defense. They just watched as I packed a suitcase with a few things and walked out into the night, without money, without a plan. It was like a knife to the heart. The family that was everything had turned its back on me. That's how I became homeless. At first, I lived with a school friend on his couch in a tiny apartment, then with a close acquaintance of my father's, Mr. Smith. Grandfather had forbidden my father to communicate with him because Smith had a competing company, also textiles, but more modern, focusing on eco-friendly materials. They were friends from college, but business drove them apart. Mr. Smith took me in, gave me a room. I worked 2 jobs, during the day as a dishwasher in a cafe, in the evening as a courier. I earned pennies to eat and not be a burden. Those were dark months, fatigue, hunger, depression. I remembered the warm house, family dinners, and cried at night. But I pulled myself together, worked like that for a year, saved up for rent for a tiny apartment in a bad neighborhood. Then Mr. Smith offered me a job as a manager in his company. I had helped him with paperwork when I lived with him. I had the skills because grandfather forced me to learn the business, and my father took me to work and taught me everything, from accounting to negotiations. The salary was 3 times higher than my 2 jobs. I agreed without thinking. That's how I started working for my grandfather's competitor. Smith's company grew. I rose from manager to sales director in a few years. I didn't want to hear about my family, blocked their numbers, avoided news. It was there in 2010 that I met my future wife, Alice, now 33F. She worked in HR, smart, kind, with a sense of humor. We started with coffee during lunch breaks, talking about life. She's from a simple family, studied on scholarships, loved art, went to exhibitions. I told her about my hobby, showed her my paintings. She encouraged me not to give up. Our dates, walks in the park, movies, drawing together. She became my rock, supported me when I remembered the past. In 2012, we got married, a modest ceremony in the park with friends. Alice is the best thing that ever happened to me. She gave birth to our daughter in 2015, our son in 2018. We bought a small house in the suburbs, lived happily. But life doesn't stand still, and events continued to unfold in an unexpected direction. In 2015, when I turned 25, I received news of my grandfather's death. He was 85, and the cause was a heart attack, not surprising, considering how he abused cigarettes and never cared about his health, ignoring doctors' advice about diet or exercise. Of course, deep down, I felt sorry for this stubborn old man. Despite all our conflicts, he did raise my father, built the company from scratch, held the family together with his iron rules, and provided a stable life for everyone. He was a product of his time, harsh, unyielding, with those old-fashioned views on a real man. But honestly, I didn't feel a huge wave of emotion. Too many insults had accumulated over the years. The pain of the eviction sat too deep, and I had long learned to shield myself from the past. It was like closing an old book, sad, but without tears or despair. The invitation to the funeral came from my mom, by regular mail, as I had long blocked all the family's numbers so as not to hear their voices and not reopen the wounds. I hesitated for a long time whether to go at all. On one hand, it could be a final farewell to that part of my life. On the other, I was afraid that seeing them would only cause anger or emptiness. Alice, my wife, advised me to go anyway. It's not for them, honey, it's for you, so you can put a full stop and move on without the burden. She was always wise in such matters, knew how to calm my doubts, and I eventually agreed, though with a heavy heart. The funeral took place at our family estate, that same huge house where I spent my childhood, which added even more emotion. Driving up there in the car, I felt a mix of nostalgia and sharp pain. The tall windows with stained glass that let sunlight into the hall, the apple orchard where we cousins played hide-and-seek or gathered apples in the fall, the stone path I used to run on barefoot in summer. Everything looked the same, as if time had stopped, but now this place seemed alien, as if it belonged to someone else, not me. Inside, the whole family was gathered, faces I hadn't seen for years and had consciously suppressed from my memory. Mom had aged, gray hair, wrinkles around her eyes. She looked tired and stooped from the years. My brother had changed too, a grown man with a beard, in a strict suit, but with the same self-satisfied smile that always annoyed me. The cousins were there. Tim, my older cousin, looked tired from his work as a mechanic, with calloused hands. Sarah hugged me when we met, but I instinctively pulled away, not ready for fake warmth. Alex was whispering something to Lisa about the good old days. Jake stood aside with his phone, as if hiding from emotions. Emma was quietly crying, wiping her tears with a handkerchief. Uncle John, already on crutches due to leg problems, was grumbling about the end of an era and how everything's going to hell. Aunt Anna, as always, was bustling in the kitchen, baking pies for the wake, to somehow maintain traditions. Aunt Mary was organizing everything with military precision, and Uncle Mike was trying to joke to lighten the tense atmosphere, though his jokes fell into emptiness. During the ceremony itself in the local church where we baptized children and buried ancestors, the priest spoke about grandfather as the pillar of the family, about his contribution to the business and the community. Mom sobbed on my brother's shoulder, holding on to him like a lifeline, and my brother sat silently with a stony face. I chose a seat at the back, away from everyone, didn't want anyone to see my emotions or try to talk to me. After the service, we went to the cemetery, the same one where my father lay, which added even more pain. I laid a flower on grandfather's grave, remembered how he scolded me for drawing, calling it a waste of time, and how he could have been proud if he had given me a chance. But I didn't want to talk to anyone. Mom tried to approach with a trembling voice. "Son, how are you? We've missed you so much." But I replied coldly, "I'm fine, thank you," and quickly turned away. My brother just nodded from a distance, as if we were acquaintances, not brothers. The cousins whispered among themselves, throwing sympathetic looks, but no one dared to come closer. Right after the burial, I got in the car and drove away, not staying for the wake where they would eat Aunt Anna's pies and share memories. It was like a final goodbye to the past. I felt relief, as if I had dropped a heavy burden, but also emptiness, because a part of me was still attached to that house. Then the entire inheritance passed into the possession of my younger brother. The family estate, which was so precious to me, memories of my father, childhood games in the garden, family holidays with loud laughter and the smell of grilled meat at barbecues, the business with all its factories and assets, and everything that traditionally belonged to the firstborn. My brother became CEO, Mom helped him with finances, using her housewife experience with accounting skills, and the other relatives remained in their positions, Uncle Mike in sales, Tim in the technical department, etc. I heard rumors through mutual acquaintances in business circles. My brother boasted about how he was modernizing the company, introducing new technologies, expanding markets. But within a year in 2016, alarming rumors started to surface. Things weren't going as well as planned. The company, which had remained stable for decades thanks to grandfather's conservative approach, began to falter under my brother's leadership. He never shone with knowledge or diligence. He was Mom's golden child, who was pampered, not forced to learn the business as intensively as I was. Grandfather pressured me with lessons in finance and negotiations, but just praised my brother for his obedience. The result wasn't long in coming. Bad decisions, like investments in dubious projects during economic instability, loss of key clients due to uncompetitive prices, increased competition from firms like the one Mr. Smith worked for. The family found themselves in a difficult situation. Cousins complained to friends that salaries were delayed for weeks. Uncle Mike was looking for another job. Aunt Mary was selling some family heirlooms to cover expenses. I didn't interfere, these were their problems. They had chosen their side years ago, and I didn't feel obligated to save those who had pushed me away. But fate decided to hit me once more, as if testing my resilience. In 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, when the whole world was in lockdowns, Mr. Smith, the man who had essentially replaced my father all this time, became my mentor and support, became seriously ill. It was COVID with lung complications, and it all happened so quickly. Within a month he was gone, without even having a proper chance to say goodbye. I was 30, and this loss just destroyed me emotionally. Smith wasn't just a boss, he was like a second father. taught me the business from the practical side, supported me in difficult moments, celebrated my successes like promotions or the birth of my children. When I fell into depression after my dad's death, he pulled me out, giving me work and faith in myself. We talked for hours about life, about past mistakes. He even praised my paintings, advising me not to give up the hobby, and always invited me to family dinners with Alice. His death brought back those same terrible feelings from my teenage years, despair eating me from the inside, emptiness as if the world had lost its meaning. I didn't sleep at night, cried into my pillow. Just like back then, Alice held my hand, cooked my favorite dishes to somehow pull me out of the abyss. The children were still little. My daughter, who was 5, asked, "Why is Daddy sad? Can I draw him a picture?" And my son, 3 years old, just hugged me. I fell into a deep depression for several months, couldn't work, sat at home, drew dark, gloomy landscapes to pour out the pain. But eventually I pulled myself together for Alice and the children, for what Smith had built and left to me. It turned out that in his will, he had left me his entire share in the company, 100%, because he had no children of his own, only nephews he didn't communicate with. He wrote, "You were like a son to me, and I trust you to continue the work." The company was already large, bigger than grandfather's, with exports to Europe, modern technologies, and stable profits. I became the full owner, merged it with our projects, and the business flourished even more. New contracts, staff expansion, investments in eco-friendly materials. By 2022, my savings had become substantial, millions from profits, smart investments in real estate and stocks, plus the inheritance from Smith. Alice and I bought a bigger house in a quiet suburb, traveled to Europe when the pandemic subsided, and life finally seemed fair. Meanwhile, my brother's affairs worsened every year. The company was declining, rumors of huge debts spread through business circles. I couldn't believe it at first. How could a great empire, built by my great-grandfather with such labor, end up in such a pitiful state? But the facts were undeniable. Suppliers were suing for unpaid bills, employees were quitting, clients were going to competitors. I had to finally believe it when I saw the listing for the sale of the family estate. Photos on realtor websites, that same house with its majestic facades, the garden with apple trees where we harvested, the fireplaces in the rooms where we told stories on winter evenings. My brother was bankrupting the company completely, Mom was in a panic, trying to save at least something, and the family was scattering, cousins were moving to other states in search of work. I hesitated for a few days, thinking. Memories of the eviction still hurt like a fresh wound, and part of me wanted them to feel the same pain. But then I thought about my father, how he loved this house, how he dreamed it would remain in the family for future generations. For the memory of my father, for my children and grandchildren, I decided. This place was part of our history. I didn't want it to fall into strangers' hands, become a hotel or something alien. By that time in 2022, I already had decent savings, years of stable work in a successful company, plus the inheritance, made buying a large mansion quite rational. We were planning to expand the family. Alice dreamed of a large garden. An investment in real estate is always profitable. I firmly decided to get the house back into my hands, but I knew a direct purchase would cause problems. If my brother or mom saw my name on the documents, they would either refuse to sell on principle or inflate the price many times over to get revenge or squeeze more money out of me. So I asked Alice to arrange the deal in her name. She agreed, though she was worried about my emotions. "It's your home, honey, but be careful not to reopen old wounds. We're doing this for our future." Alice was always my rock in such decisions, smart, practical, with that warm heart that helped me not lose my humanity. We hired a reliable realtor who kept everything secret, haggled over the price. My brother was desperate and agreed to a lower than market price, and the deal went smoothly. When the documents were signed, I felt mixed emotions, victory, but also sadness at how it had all turned out. When we arrived to move our things, with a moving truck full of boxes with books, children's toys, and my old paintings, my brother and mom were standing on the doorstep, shocked and confused. They probably expected some stranger buyer, but here I was with Alice and the kids. "What are you doing here? This is our house," my brother shouted, his face red with anger. Mom cried, pressing her hands to her chest. "Son, how could you do this? This is our family nest." I calmly showed them the documents in Alice's name, explained that it was all legal, and added, "You put it up for sale yourselves, and we bought it fairly. If you don't back off, I'll call the police. I don't want a scene in front of the children." They tried to argue. My brother yelled about betrayal and family traditions. Mom begged me to remember the blood ties, but they eventually backed down. The law was on my side, and they knew they couldn't do anything. We moved in gradually. The children ran around the garden, laughing and playing under the apple trees, just like I used to. Alice furnished the kitchen and living room with modern furniture, but kept some old elements, like the fireplace in the main hall. I sat in my old room, now converted into a studio, and painted, feeling peace for the first time in years. But the pain didn't disappear. Memories of the eviction surfaced every time I passed the door I was thrown out of. A few months later, my brother sent a message. "We need to meet, it's important." I agreed out of pure curiosity. I wanted to see what he would say, and maybe deep down I hoped for an apology. We met at a cafe in downtown Boston, neutral territory. He looked haggard, aged prematurely. The debts had sucked the life out of him, plus a divorce. It turned out he had married a school friend, but the marriage fell apart due to financial problems and constant arguments. We ordered coffee and my brother got straight to the point. We should all live in our house again. It was always ours, the family's, for mom, for the cousins, for everyone. You can't just take it. I almost choked. Ours. When grandfather was kicking me out, you sat silently and were happy about the inheritance. Mom didn't say a word in my defense, even though I was begging on my knees. The family watched as an 18-year-old kid, walked out into the night without a penny, and no one stood up for me. He tried to justify himself. That was a long time ago. We were young, grandfather was pressuring us. But now we're family, flesh and blood. Mom is sick, heart problems. She needs this house, a familiar place. The cousins are in trouble, they could live there. I reminded him of everything. Where was this family when I was told that's your problem and left without a roof? I worked 2 jobs, slept on friends' couches, ate whatever I could while you enjoyed the inheritance in a warm house. I built a life by myself without your help, and now this is my home. He asked, begged, even mom called later in tears. The cousins sent messages asking me to be merciful and forgive the past. But I refused firmly. You made your choice years ago, now live with the consequences. This is my home for my family. So now I'm writing this post, sitting by the fireplace in the main hall, the same one where I painted with my father, sipping whiskey from a crystal glass and trying to sort out my feelings. The fire is crackling, autumn rain outside. The children are asleep in their rooms. Alice is reading a book next to me, stroking my hand. On one hand, they're family, blood, shared memories. Mom is getting older and really looks bad. My brother is in trouble. Maybe he deserves a second chance. Maybe I should forgive, let them live in the guest wing or something, so as not to be a monster. On the other hand, where was this family when I was being kicked out of the house, when I was begging for help? They didn't reach out a hand then, why should I now? I built everything myself, and this house is a symbol of my victory. Am I wrong for not letting them in? AITA. Update. Hi Reddit, it's me, the op. A few weeks have passed since I published my story, and I decided to write this update because your thoughts really helped me figure everything out. First, I want to thank everyone who commented. There were over 500 comments, from support to harsh criticism, and it made me rethink the situation once more. Many wrote that I am in TA, not the asshole, because the family is to blame for what happened, and that I have a right to my space after everything I've been through. Others advised thinking about forgiveness, saying family is family and mom is getting old, maybe I should give them a chance. There were also those who said I got my revenge, and it's cool, but now it's time to be the bigger man. I read everything, discussed it with Alice, my wife, and even went to a therapist because my emotions were still raging. Thank you, your words gave me a perspective I didn't have. After the post, the situation escalated. My brother didn't calm down after our meeting at the cafe. He started bombarding me with messages, calling from different numbers. I blocked them, but he found new ways. At first it was, please, let's talk like people. Mom cries every day, her heart is bad because of the stress. Then it turned to accusations. You're selfish, you took our house like a thief in the night. Father would be ashamed of you. That stung. Mentioning my father always hurts because he was the only one who truly cared. But I reminded myself, father would be proud that I stood on my own 2 feet without their help. Mom called too, her voice trembling. Son, I know we made a mistake, but give us a chance. I'm getting old, I don't want to die in some boxy apartment. This is our home, with memories of your grandmother, grandfather. I listened, but my heart didn't ache. Too many years of silence on their part. The cousins and uncles also became more active. Sarah, my teacher cousin, wrote a long message on Facebook. I hadn't blocked everyone, as I sometimes check for news. We all regret not standing up for you then. Grandfather was a tyrant, we were scared. But now let's unite, for the children, yours and ours. Maybe let mom live in the guest room. Tim, my mechanic cousin, called. Bro, the company collapsed, I'm out of work, maybe you can help. And the house, it's our shared one. Even Uncle Mike, that cheerful slacker, sent a letter. Remember how we played football in the garden? Don't ruin that. They all suddenly remembered the family ties. But where were they when I was sleeping on a friend's couch, eating fast food and working 16-hour days? No one called, offered help, not even a penny. I replied to everyone the same way. You made your choice 17 years ago. Now it's my turn. Thanks to your advice, I realized that they have done nothing for me in my life to deserve me letting them live in my house. No, seriously, I reviewed everything. Mom always favored my brother, calling him the golden child, while scolding me for my dreams. When my father died, she hugged him and I sat alone. When grandfather kicked me out, she was silent. My brother, he was happy about the inheritance, didn't even call to check if I was alive. The relatives, they whispered but didn't interfere. I built my life myself, from homeless to company owner, married a wonderful woman, have children growing up in love. This house is a symbol of my success, not theirs. Why should I share it with those who rejected me? Many commenters wrote, "You are not obligated. They are reaping what they sowed." And that's true. The therapist said, "Forgiveness doesn't mean returning to toxic relationships. You can forgive for your own sake, but not let them back in." But I'm not a monster. I thought about a compromise. I offered my brother, "I will help financially, but not with the house. Find an apartment for mom, I'll pay for a year's rent, and I'll give you a job in my company, start from the bottom like I did." He refused. "No, we want the house." That showed their true motives, not family, but comfort. Mom said, "You are cruel, just like grandfather." The irony, right? I blocked all of them for good. Alice supported me. "You did everything you could, now live for us." The children love the house. My daughter draws in the garden like I used to. My son plays in the rooms. We set up a studio for my paintings, and I even started selling them online. The hobby became a side income. Regarding business, my company is thriving. We are expanding into Europe. My brother's firm went completely bankrupt. I heard he's looking for work in another state. Mom lives in a rented apartment. The cousins have scattered. I don't rejoice in their problems, but I don't regret it. Your advice helped. I am in TA and life goes on. If there's anything else, I'll write. Thank you, Reddit. You are the best. What are your thoughts on this story? Did the author do the right thing? What would you have done in his shoes? Share your opinion in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new stories.